So before we get started, I just wanted to say something real briefly. I know it seems like we've been devoting a lot of time at this year's conference to this topic, and it's true, we have. But I think we're really at a moment here in the tech industry, and this isn't important just because of the impact that it has on individuals, and there are many of them, but it's important because it has impact on all of us, on the industry, and you're seeing that right now. So I hope you will stay and listen and ask questions, and that we can move the conversation forward into real action. So with that, Ninian, thank you for being here. Can you just provide a little bit of context? Why did you come forward now, and what went into coming forward? Because it wasn't as simple as calling a reporter and saying, hey, I want to talk.
So I was harassed by Justin Kalbeck 7 years ago. And after 2 years, I knew of 2 other friends who were Asian female CEOs that he had also harassed. And at the time, it didn't seem like there was anything I could do to expose him. So I was warning female founders one at a time. And recently, many of them have emailed me saying, I remember you warning me back then. But over many years, I watched as his firm got bigger and bigger, and it didn't seem like there was anything I could do. In the past few months, I've been working with a reporter, and Justin had harassed many women by this point, including groping, kissing them, warning them they would never work in the industry again if they didn't do what he wanted. He was very litigious and threatening. The reporter had a new mortgage and a small child, and was very afraid he would lose his mortgage if Justin made good on his threats. So it took a lot of work to get enough people to come on the record. I had one woman to my house for dinner and convinced her over several hours that it would be worth it to go on the record. I started joking with the reporter that this had become my second job to get the article out, but it was unpaid and would probably damage my career. But I thought that it was worth it. And we finally got the article out. Justin told the reporter that his lawyers would be in touch. And for 8 hours, nothing really happened. There was no buzz. There's no social media. One of the other named women told me it was her worst fear that she had used her name, and it failed. And I felt like I jumped off a cliff, took 2 people with me. And then, actually, Ellen Pao texted me. She's a friend, an investor.
And real quick, just remind people who Ellen Pao is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, Ellen Pao had a famous lawsuit, gender discrimination lawsuit against Kleiner Perkins, and has spoken out very actively about gender equality in Silicon Valley. So she spent hours tweeting and retweeting what people were writing. Sarah Lacy also had coverage. And gradually, through these grassroots and getting people to speak up, we were able to get more visibility and create more buzz. Many male VCs that evening started to, on Twitter, say vocally that they were against what had happened. So I had my goal as, there could be great social media and hashtags, but what's really important, the goal is to get the predator out of his position of power. So I wanted to figure out what we needed to do. I found the email addresses of the limited partners, the investors in the firm. I emailed them. I forwarded that email to the other accusers and asked them to email the LPs. I found anyone I knew who might know the LPs, tried to give them more information, looked for more evidence that I could present. Anytime a new accuser contacted me, which were several within the next few days, I tried to connect them with a reporter. And it felt like Binary Capital's PR person I was in a battle with that person where they were issuing statements, and I was alone in my apartment trying to get Justin out of a position of power. But we succeeded. So he resigned 3 days after the article, and a few days after that, their fund was canceled, the third fund that I know of to ever be canceled in the history of Silicon Valley, over 30 years. The 2 other partners in his firm have also resigned or offered to resign. A few days after that, 24 women went to the New York Times and told about their tales of sexual harassment. It turned out that one of them, Dave McClure, had been accused by multiple women. He had already been removed from a position of power, but this had not been communicated to anyone. So he was still in a position where he was meeting with women. One of his accusers called me on the phone and asked for advice, and I told her she needs to figure out what the goal is and then communicate that goal very clearly. So she put out a statement on Twitter asking for his resignation because there were 10 accusers. Another accuser also put out her record of what happened with the same request. And the next morning, Dave McClure resigned. The following week, which was last week, Frank Atwell of Ignition Partners, a managing partner of that firm, also resigned due to multiple incidents of inappropriate conduct. And I think that there have been many stories of sexual harassment over the years. And what's important, I think can be a lot of discussion and buzz, but what's important to me is measurable results. Predators who have been preying upon many people over the course of years should be removed from their position of power. And it should not take the amount of work that we had to go through and people putting their careers and mortgages on the line to do that.
And Ninian, you mentioned Ellen Pao before, and she lost her case. Do you think that the fact that you and the other women who have come forward recently have had tangible impact, tangible results we're seeing them happening? Do you think that I know this is a controversial question, but do you think that the fact that you're not suing, that people are paying more attention to it and that it gives it more legitimacy? I'm not saying that that's the case, that's the way it should be, but what's your take on that?
Well, I think that people have said to me that it was more convincing that we all had nothing to gain and a lot to lose. So it's hard to point fingers at why someone would say this and put their reputation on the line when they have nothing to gain. That being said, many people have told me that real change occurs when the law changes, and that the only way the law changes is through lawsuits. So I think that's unfortunate. But I actually think a lot of people who do, now I believe that some people who do lawsuits are doing it at a personal cost in order to get the law to change so that people can actually be protected. Part of the reason that this went on for so long, in addition to enablement, is that EEOC law does not cover this case. So it was not illegal to do this for 10 years.
So I want to open up to questions in just a couple of minutes, but can you spend some time walking us through what your recommendations are for what the industry as a whole should do at this point? I know you touched, those of you who were in the town hall yesterday heard a little bit of it, but go into more detail and the steps that you recommend.
Yes, so we've seen in the 3 firms that spoke out, the ones that tried to hide, minimize, pretend it was not a problem are now suffering a lot of financial difficulties or are canceled. And the one that recognized it, was proactive, terminated the person, and publicly communicated this has a much better chance of survival. So any sizable company has harassment, and the firms that recognize this and proactively work to combat it will be the ones that will do better. And in terms of how to combat it, every person in here knows how to design a product where they are not the target user. You would go interview the user. And I think that there are 5 women who have spoken out that I know of, and VCs have not actually yet asked us about our experiences and how the system has previously failed to enable founders to speak out.
Are you open to VCs coming to you
Yes.
to talk to you? Anyone in here?
Sure.
Yeah?
So I think that they will. I just
It hasn't happened yet.
It should be said, yeah. And I think if you're thinking of designing, imagine how you design a product. You know, if someone said to you, this previous product had 3 systemic failures in the last month, we're not going to do any postmortems, we're not going to talk to the people involved, or interview any users, we're going to go in a room, and next month we'll present you the new solution. I think we would all have an assessment of how likely that is to work. And each person knows what to do to design a product for a different demographic. You interview the customer, and it may be awkward, and if this product hasn't worked for them before, that initial conversation might be uncomfortable, but that is how you get the product that will work. I also think that when someone is fired for sexual harassment, that should be made public. Much like how when someone commits a sexual crime, they must register as a sexual offender publicly, whereas people who commit other crimes are not required to do that. And I think in the case of firing, we keep it quiet because often it's a matter of fit, and someone who is fired from one company may be a star in another company. But in the case of sexual harassment, someone who was a predator in one company is very likely, after they were quietly fired, to get another job 2 weeks later and continue harassing women for years to come.
And just to point out, there were complaints about Justin, and he went and started a new fund and was able to do that. So this is a real thing and has happened several times.
Yes, and in fact, his previous firm put the harassment accuser under a non-disparagement contract and gave excellent references to Justin, which enabled him to continue harassing women for 5 more years. So I think that non-disparagement and non-disclosure agreements should not apply to founders who have suffered sexual harassment as defined by the EEOC. And I think that when firings occur, it should be public. Lastly, I think that men should speak out. And I think it can be nerve-wracking because you don't want to say the wrong thing. But I think otherwise there's deafening silence. And if 7% of women are, 7% of venture capitalists are women, then the other 93% should publicly say something to express that they're not okay with the situation. I think also what we've heard.
Good?
Oh, okay.
Should we go to questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Question over here.
Stephen Wolf Pereira from New Star. First off, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for being brave. I think it's incredibly important that we hear this, and we don't need to apologize and ask people to stay in the room to hear this, because this is actually one of the most important issues in the Valley, so thank you for that. 2, full disclosure, I'm on the board of the Level Playing Field Institute with Ellen. Mitch and Frida Caper are big proponents of unconscious bias training, and you see a lot of eyes rolling in the Valley when they talk about it, but it really is an important issue, so hopefully more firms will take that on. But I'm curious, when you see this kind of behavior continuing over and over, at the end of the day, it's all about the money, and how do you actually go to the money to really make an impact? Have you spoken with institutional investors, the LPs that actually give the funds to all the VCs? Is that a way to also help force the hand? Because those LPs, the institutional investors, do actually care about this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think that the original reporter was very smart to include the LPs in the article, which incentivized action. I know there are many people who right now are having conversations about how to create legal protections and policy protections, so including helping hold LPs responsible so that they can hold venture capitalists responsible. So there are many conversations going on. If you would like to help, you can email me at ninian@gmail.com, just my first name @gmail.com.
Thank you. Question over here.
Hi, Caitlin Kyle, S&P Global. First of all, thank you. We spoke last night, and you're so brave. How has it? I think people, you clap and we say, yeah, that it's so wonderful what you did, but what has happened since then for your own career? Have you felt that maybe some companies or firms that you work with, because you're a vocal person that will take action, how have you personally, how's your career been since this happened?
Mm-hmm. So firstly, this whole thing has been way beyond what I expected. I thought I was jumping off a cliff and I'd be somewhat damaged, but it was the right thing to do. But I actually feel as though halfway off the cliff, the community caught me. And I was worried that some people would not want to work with me as much, but it has actually been a very pleasant surprise in that I received many emails from people saying they want more to work with me, and I got many introductions, and one VC saying, there's a check with your name on it waiting for you if you ever decide to need that. So it has been a pleasant surprise.
Question over here.
Hi, that makes me very tall. Dawn Lyon with Glassdoor. I just also want to commend you for your courage and thank you. One thing I'd love to talk about and get your opinion on is this decency pledge. There was a lot of coverage of it after it was announced. Almost every woman I've talked to about it, including myself, has done an eye roll. I said on stage yesterday that we're living in the United States, and to have a pledge to treat people with dignity and respect that is guaranteed under the Constitution and quite honestly a human right seems a little ridiculous. I'd really love to talk about it, especially in the room, because I don't know if there's anyone here who's taken it, but I'd really love your opinion on is that going to have an impact?
I think that we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I would like to have laws that protect founders, and I would like LPs to be completely responsible, and I would like policy and an ombudsperson and so forth. But until we get to that point, if someone the day after wants to suggest a solution that will get us one step of the way toward that, I think that's great. And I think what's worse is the deafening silence of people, particularly men, who are so afraid that they will be criticized and eye-rolled that they say nothing. And to me, that is much worse. So if someone says something and it works to some degree and helps the conversation, and maybe it's not the perfect solution, but it gets us one step closer, I commend that.
Hi, my name is Kay Koplovitz, and I'm with Springboard Growth Capital. And I just wanted to commend you for what you've done. Thank you very much, and for all the people that spoke out. But what I think is really critical for women entrepreneurs, and we've brought almost 700 to market since 2000, women entrepreneurs in technology and life sciences, is to really get them funded, to really get them supported. 86% of our companies get funding. 81% are in business today, over 18 years, 170 exits and 15 IPOs. And I only say that so that people in the room recognize there are actually successful women entrepreneurs raising capital. It's a hard process still. But the more women that are in the ecosystem, and I agree with whoever said it yesterday, women are supporting women today. That's really critical, and it is really true that women, and we've been speaking out for them for almost 20 years now. So there are solutions in the marketplace, and the solutions are even beyond addressing an issue of harassment. The solutions are bringing more successful women to marketplace and making them a really critical part of the economy. And if anyone wants to hear more about what the solutions are, I'm happy to talk to you. But let's move on, let's solve this problem, and let's get more women funded. That's the important thing that's really going to change this culture.
And I think you do talk about how having the presence of more women in other industries has led to less harassment, so good point. I want to take one, we need to wrap up very, very soon, but one more very quick question over there, and then I'm sorry, we'll need to wrap
Tom Soto
up.
with Frontier Impact. I'm a longtime GP of a large number of pensions, and there is a real era of change going on with the pensions from a governance point of view. And all that you said and all that you've gone through, not only do you have to admire, you have to really, there's an old quote which is sometimes the most courageous, the one who stands most alone. But that doesn't last long. And obviously what happened was there was a snowball effect where sometimes people are just looking for courage to attach their wagon to, and that's what you did. And there are a lot of men in the room who are supportive of this. There are a lot of people in the room who are supportive of equity across all phases, gender, race, and so forth.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to ask you to get to your question, though, because
My
we do
point
need
is
to wrap
this. Don't underestimate the value of what you've achieved and converting that into even a small movement and being able to get some reform by then going to the Council of Institutional Investors, which are all the LPs, or CalPERS and CalSTRS Investment Committee, and putting a demand on them to have, as part of the due diligence questionnaire for GPs, those concerns highlighted. They will likely adopt it. If that doesn't work, then you go to the Senate or the Assembly Oversight Committee on PERS and have them legislate it. You don't need to go to the feds.
Oh,
if you
so
want to
thank you.
talk further,
Okay.
let me know.
I want to give you the last very, very, very brief final word.
Okay, well, two things. There are a lot of actions and movements behind the scenes in progress now that I am supporting. Secondly, what we've seen in the press is the tip of the iceberg. The people who are willing to speak out are the people who said no. But no one does this for 10 years if there aren't some women who are too afraid to say no. And I speak out for those people. And if you wonder, why did they not just say no right then, over and over, then think of the last time you were in the boardroom and someone made a sexist comment, and whether you loudly said no over and over. Thank you.
Thank you. I just, real quick, I want to thank you. I know you've been thanked a lot for your courage and bravery. I want to thank you for your hard work.
Oh, thank
so,
you. Thank you.
Thanks.